right, well, it's good to see everybody today. And it is July 23rd. This is the regular meeting of the Board of Directors for the San Diego Community Power. Start with a call to order, which I've just done, and I will sing the Pledge of Allegiance. So please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, liberty and justice for all. We're going to have a roll call by our board clerk.
Board Member West. Board Member Montgomery.
Here.
Board Member Baber.
Here.
Vice Chair Padilla. Chair Mosca.
Present.
A quorum with Board Member West.
Let's go to a report from our closed session by our General Counsel.
Thank you. This is the report from closed session for the special meeting agenda this afternoon. Session item number 1, action taken by the board. Session item number 2, conference with labor negotiators. There was no reportable action taken by the board.
Any changes to the posted agenda? Seeing anybody raise their hand, let's move to public comments. Have anybody that would like to address this body on items that are not on our agenda?
I'll start with the first one from Gary Jans. I note that the minutes from May and June board meetings and the recording of the June board meeting have not been posted on the SDCP website. When may we expect them to be available?
I want to give Gary Johns is your mic on?
Yes, I think it's appropriate to also give clerk, and as so all know, a lot of events to deal with, and including issues that we're all dealing with. She can sit as soon as possible.
That concludes the general comment.
All right, no more public. All right, well, we have no consent calendar, so we're going to jump right to the regular agenda. Item number 1, which is the operations and administration report from our interim executive officer, Cody Hoover.
So this item, I'll run through these items, and you have the report in front of you, and there's a series of attachments as well. I'll briefly touch on, and then Ty Tosdell from Tosdell APC, our regulatory counsel, is so starting with this report. Each month we do put a COVID-19 update on here. There is no change in the report at this time, but I want to just let you all know that we are continuing to track this and both any impacts to our own operations, administrative standpoint, as well as financial or procurement impacts. And at this time, there's none to report. I'd also like to update you each month on RFPs and solicitations that are happening, and we have a final recommendation on the agenda for one of the most recent solicitations, and the other items here are related to power procurement and also some additional support, mostly our regulatory activities. So we're bringing on a and legal consultants to support the for our ERA filings, and I'll talk a little bit more about that. Those are all within the purview of the signing authority, just sharing them with you so you're informed. Moving along, we also started adding committee meetings to this report, just to let you know have any topics to report out on, they'll do that. So the Finance and Risk Management Committee did not meet this month. We did not for them and necessary to meet, and then the Community Advisory Committee did July 17th, which was last Friday. Several of their agenda items, discuss those as they discussions with San Diego Gas and Electric, also other I'm sorry, last item. This one, we have a couple updates here. Series of updates, and first one that we should bring up, brought to your attention is something that's called your application that SDG&E recently filed. You see, the description is included here as well as some additional backup documents. This trigger application is the this typically applies to all CCA customers. So it'd be access customers. In this case, this application applies primarily to Solana Energy customers. SDCP is engaging this proceeding and filing a test because it's beneficial to us as an organization to this proceeding being the precedent that it sets both here substantial increase in such a short amount of time for CCA customers. What this one is doing, the request is that the commission authorize nearly 9 while also refunding bundled customers the same amount over. This would impact Solana Energy Alliance, and a small amount of customers comes out to imagine, especially during COVID, quite a rate shock for those customers.
Excuse me, Cody. Sorry, I'm sorry to interrupt. You could speak closely. Getting
this mic. I'll speak louder.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. It also, lost my train of thought a little bit, I'm sorry. This also, we're working with CalCCA, which Association of CCAs throughout the state of California, to compare notes kind of on our tests and engage collectively in responses to this proceeding. And Ty, I'll let you comment on this or the next one. That, or if the board has any. Do you want to pause here and talk about this one? I think that might be helpful.
At the appropriate time, and whenever you come up, down on just why it is unique and how it would impact.
Why don't we pause on this one and do that?
I mean, I think even if it's going to impact Solana Alliance in the near term, it's important we're engaged. But certainly, if it's that unique and it's something that's going to be precedential setting, be engaged. But I'm just trying to understand, get my hands around what is the uniqueness. Is it the fact that the largeness of the increase, or is it the fact that it's so large on the CCA, but the bundled customers are different?
The reason this particular application is unique, Mr. Mosca, is because it is the first time this type of application, since the PUC adopted a decision changes at the PCIA back in 2018. So as part of that decision, the PUC set a cap change PCIA. Utilities reach a certain threshold, they can then file this type of application. The balance of their PCIA revenue reaches a certain level, they can file this application. They can exceed the cap and collect the outstanding amount that's contained in that particular shortfall. So this is being viewed as precedential, certainly by us, but also by CalCCA, CCA program. So it's unique because it's the first time this type of application is being filed.
Nobody's ever exceeded the cap before?
So the concern from the other CCA programs is that their utilities will sue. So certainly we've been in discussions with CalCCA, and they are. I think from our standpoint, the fact that it's precedential is certainly important, but the fact that it's SDG&E making this application, making this first proposal is also important. They're the utility that will ensure they're the.
They briefly talk about a couple of things that we and CalCCA are going to look at as part of the process.
Sure. The decision from 2018 as I said, establishes a cap year over year, excuse me, protect against rate volatility. And so once utilities reach this particular threshold, then they are permitted to recover, to reduce that account. But the decision doesn't address by how much. They're just supposed to reduce it below the threshold. So one of the issues we're going to be raising is SDG&E is proposing to reduce that outstanding amount to zero. The issues that we're looking into is whether they just reduce it below that threshold. Another issue that we're going to be into is that amortization period. SDG&E has roughly $9 million that they're over a 3-month period. The effect on ratepayers would be quite different if you extended that amortization period 12 months, or 16 months or something. That's another one of the issues. And another issue is just to, certainly how CCA will be looking into whether SDG&E's math is right. And there's actually 9 million. So some of the things we're looking into right now.
Volatility that they're experiencing could be pushed off to the CCAs very easily, because we go from a situation where we have some firmness, some understanding of what pricing looks like in the future. But now if exceeding, they're routinely going in and saying, cover more.
I do want to also caution everybody on the use of the term precedent. There's a statute that provides the Commission does not have to follow its past precedents, but it frequently does. So I would that term with errors.
I think another thing that this highlights really is volatility of the exit fees or the PC. I think that's a bit of an unintended consequence from the PC. I don't think that was their intent in the decision. Now that this decision is fairly new, it's from 2018, seeing it actually play out in real time, see how it's not impacting ratepayers in the way that I don't think they expected. At least I hope that's not. That's one of the things we doesn't really work. Charge customers, in this case, close to $200 a month for a few months top of the regular. Not be the way we need this to work, and it's a bigger issue here that we'd like.
I completely agree with Stephen's comments. If I can add a couple observations. The notion behind the is to minimize the volatility of the PCIA year to year. This trigger application, the way it's structured, permits a tremendous amount of volatility once that trigger is reached. So there's components of the decision that are working against each other. So that seems like a decision.
We're engaged and we're tracking this and we're testing in this case, but we just wanted to make sure that you're aware of that and questions or discussion.
Vice Chair Padilla.
I just want to thank you for your leadership on work. Some salient arguments to be made in the with respect to the inconsistencies internal to the decision, consequences, and often cases, folks who really have the capacity to absorb those kind of have to be very this realm and also in the proceedings, calling that out and calling attention. So I'm happy to add my last. This has an absurd result. I personally think it's inconsistent, aggressive. Ratepayers, customers, this adverse potential impact.
I appreciate that, Mr. Padilla. I think affordability should be a consideration. I share your view.
Thank you.
Hi, if you don't mind staying up there, I'm going to go right to the next item and see if you have additions to this.
Sure.
The next item we want to call your attention to is some discussions we've had recently with SDG&E. I'm trying to lean into this microphone because I'm hearing the volume is dipping in and out from folks. And we had some meetings with them about another recent decision from the PUC that required payment and disconnection protection, so customer protection. Been going on for a few years. The final decision just came out recently. SDG&E wanted to alert us to potential impacts that they foresee from that decision. And their perspective, they felt that they could not comply with the requirements of the decision and also comply with CCAs that are launching at the same time, suggesting actually a need to delay our launch because of the customer information system software to that, both for the decision and for the CCAs. And so we had a series of discussions. They actually, and we attached their letter, letter to the PUC asking for delay in implementing some of the requirements of that decision, comply with the upgrade to their software and allow the CCAs to launch, and the CPUC denied that request. Opposition from the Utility Reform Network and UCAN. We attached all the letters here so you could see them. And we have some similar concerns that, we've been making operational and financial decisions based on this timing, complied with all the things we need to comply with and filed all the files, and have been very open about our timeline and sharing our information, and that there's got to be another solution that allows them to comply with the decisions and offers customer protections while also allowing us to launch in the schedule that we need to. So those decisions and discussions also continue, but I just wanted to bring those to light for you. So if there's questions, do you have any questions on that?
The only thing I would add to Ms. Hooven's comments, which were, provided a great summary of what's happening, is that there's a resolution passed several years ago that says utilities have to be ready within 6 months of an implemented CCA program to commence the billing process. SDG&E is aware of that. We're reminded of that. That's been on the book. No surprises there. So I just wanted to add that side there.
When the PUC said that SDG&E couldn't satisfaction of this program, in terms of the CIS, or the launch of CCA, did PUC know the decision would have potential impacts on the CCA?
I'm not sure to what extent they took that into consideration.
SDG&E didn't mention that in their letter to them,
They did.
But to your point, I'm not sure how much they considered that.
So where do we go from here? Because I think that certainly, I think that there should have been more communication between the joint CCAs, this region, utility, so that we can, in an effective way, forth our argument up in San Francisco to make sure the PUC understands what the consequences are going to be here, and even work on a solution in terms of what makes sense for the deployment of CIS.
So Chair Moscow, we have been in touch regularly with SDG&E, specifically regarding the system. Calls on that subject. This is the first time, this most recent call, that we have expressed an issue regarding. So this is the first notice that we got, despite those frequent communications. One further step that we could take is that send our communication up to the Public Utilities Commission on record. Staff at the Energy Division. That may SDG&E is supposed to be. Do you also want to clarify? SDG&E hasn't told us that they're going to be late with the system. They've told us it's going to be difficult. They've said it's going to be impossible. They still haven't said we're not going to be ready. So we are looking for some confirmation. I would also add that letter from the PUC, while it denies their SDG&E's request to delay implementation, it leaves the door open crack at the end. SDG&E to come back with a specific request for some sort of delay.
I guess I would leave it to staff to really to finish up the conversations with the utility, and to come up with a strategy to move forward, ensure that our interests are represented, because it's unacceptable. Everything that we've done, it's unacceptable that, especially a delay of this many months. Vice Chief and Chair Padilla, did you, or anybody else?
And then, let's see, we have another, the last bullet points we highlighted here is filings on bundled procurement plans, are all tricky words to stick together. And we filed our RPS plan with the CPUC on July, received notice that it was accepted on 6th. And then the last item is the integrated resource plan coming due in September, and we'll be bringing that for discussion. We also have attached TIE's report, so if there's any other items that you are highlighting, even though
I think we've covered the major items. I did want to report to the board that we filed a caucus brief in the support of for review. I said Cal CCA file an amicus brief. So wanted to note utilities filed in opposition to Cal CCA's brief, saying since they were parties in the proceeding below, proper amicus parties, and that should be rejected. So if that is granted, SUCP will be CCA representative participated in the case. So other than that, we have heard nothing from the court. I'll certainly advise.
Last item for this report, unless there's any questions on that, is this is based on our discussion last time. We are updating you regularly on policies that we're working on or updating or have updated. Actually provided a policy matrix for you, and we provided it in color-coded this time, green, yellow, and red for, or maybe it's instead of red, for what we're working on, and just to show you the ones that we're chipping away at, the ones that we're working on, the ones that we still have yet to. This is a living document. You know, this is based on priorities that change, what we think is more important. We could shift this around. This is based on staff ability to get these things done just when things become appropriate, or it seems that we don't need this now, we could do it later. So wanted to make sure that you saw this buried in this packet here. It's a document, and we'll continue to attach this each time so you can see the status of where we are and what we're working on, and if comments about accelerating something or add something or maybe decide we can combine, etc. It's here for your reference if you need.
Thank you, Cody, for highlighting that. I was brought up by maybe a couple of us the last time, and so now it's implemented in the next meeting. Highlighted that ask questions about when are you going to create this policy or that policy. Right here in our staff report, nicely kind of colored, shows you exactly when we're tackling things. I think at some point we should have a discussion about, I have talked offline, some of the policies, starting off in our community advisory committee. I thought that was a really good, especially when you look at the sustainable diverse workforce policy of interest, a bunch of other policies, that these are big discussions. And I think starting them off in the community advisory committee, where we can really start that conversation and engage the community. By the time it gets to the board, that have been a lot of work done on some of these policies. So I thought that was a good idea. Has any ideas about how some of these policies will start off in terms of whether they should come directly to the board, or if they should be going to the community advisory committee first. We'll have, I guess, an opportunity to talk about that more, because at some point, the advisory committee will have their work plan before us, and so we're able to insert some of these items on their work plan as well.
So yeah, I would encourage you to just review this and take a look at it, and we could talk at any point in time, but I want to keep updating this for you, and we're thinking about it too, to see what fits in where. Maybe we'll even add something that reflects where and what as well. It's a living document.
All right, any questions for our interim executive director, Cody, her report, or for Ty, our regulatory counsel? Not seeing any questions. Do we have any public comments on item number 1?
We do. First public comment is from Matthew Vasilakis. Dear board chair and board members, we are disappointed to hear that SDCP is already having to battle SDG&E on multiple fronts to secure the community's clean energy future. As you are aware, SDG&E sent a letter to the CP requesting an unnecessary delay in its customer information system due to difficulties in implementing CPUC policy. This is an unacceptable ask for a multi-billion-dollar company profiting over $1 million a day. SDG&E can afford to hire the right people to figure it out and meet with SDCP and other stakeholders to get the job done without delay and risking SDCP's finances and launch. Secondly, the recent PCIA exit fee increase that SDG&E proposed, while not directly impacting SDG&E, is an opening salvo of what to expect from SDG&E. Adversarial, profit-centered actions ready to undermine the community. We urge the board to be hyper-attentive to what SDG&E is and know that advocates in the community board's back to ensure that SDCP. Thank you. Next one is from Edward Lopez. Edward Lopez, Executive Director, UCAN, Utility Consumers Action Network, where we opposed SDG&E's request for an extension to implement customer protections required by E.20-06-003, which makes permanent the disconnection protections currently in place. If required to comply, SDG&E claimed it would be unable to complete its deployment of its customer information system in January 2021. And noted that SDG&E was aware of the direction the proceeding was taking well in advance and was disappointed that SDG&E was not more proactive in dealing with the customer protections in its CIS upgrade. SDG&E corporate cousin SCG did not seek this type of delay. UCAN felt SDG&E should not be able to use its long-planned CIS to delay the implementation of long-awaited and much-needed customer protections. UCAN is encouraged that the Commission suggested SDG&E meet and confer with parties to find a resolution, and that any further request for extension by SDG&E be. That concludes the public comment for item 1.
Thank you. All right, let's move to item number 2, which is approval of marketing and communications agreement with civilian executive director.
Yeah, we're very excited about this one. So we are recommending to you tonight to approve a marketing communications agreement with for a 2-year term beginning August 1st of 2020. Delegate the authority of execution to the interim. So Civilian Incorporated, we very excited about them. We do have their CEO on the line, I believe still. I know she has childcare issues coming up soon. She's here in case you have any questions. We issued this RFP April and in May, and we had quite a bit of interest in this and assembled quite a great team of different perspectives, both professionally and graphically, to screen this group. We were seeking a pretty broad scope. It was everything from branding and design and messaging and our agency identity, website design, to community outreach and stakeholder engagement, marketing, advertising, media relations, public affairs, and then of course we want to measure all of the things that distributed it as broadly as we. I even actually found some, this is a suggestion from our community advisor, I think. I distributed it to a national African American Marketing Association and a national Latino association as well to see, you know, in this proposal. Civilian Inc. scored highest. There was some tough competition, but there was only a few, I would say, that really took diversity of our communities and the blend of skill sets we needed, but also the diversity of our communities that we to heart and really thought creatively at. Represented that both in their organization and team that they assembled to execute this corporation. so it requires their own company to go through a series of screening to make social responsibility, diversity measures with, as well as mission, shifting away from for-profit corporate as well. We thought that was a very mission-aligned mission as well, which is pretty exciting. I rest, but they also will be collaboratively with the sub-consultant we have to do some real interesting behavioral research to help. Talked a bit about this, but our launch is a very good time for customers and to make sure that our stakeholders really follow along with what we're doing and who we are. This next 2 years of this work will be really. And Stacy Smith is on the line. I don't know if we can get just a quick minute if technology is working to let her just introduce herself so you see her. And
Cody, I'm on the line. I'm having a very hard time hearing you, so I'm
hearing that pretty often.
Okay.
I apologize to everybody on the line for that.
No, so if I miss something, just let me know.
So I was just turning it over to you for just a minute to introduce yourself and say who you are and whatever else you'd like to say very briefly.
Okay, thank you. We're thrilled to be selected for this important initiative. Civilian's a full-service agency. We have a team of 30 of San Diego-based marketing professionals. I think it's important to note that we're woman-owned. We're a certified small business located right in Mission Valley. But I think Cody might have mentioned it. One of our important differentiators is our alignment with San Diego Community Power values. We're a certified B Corporation. We work solely on campaigns that strengthen communities and have done a lot of work in San Diego over the course of the last 20 years. Going into this, we did a tremendous amount of pre-work in both the proposal and the pitch, and understand that the board's been in the trenches from the start. So we wanted to convey that we're very eager to spend some time with each of you as part of our stakeholder engagement process. And also, I think important to note is one of our first presentations will hopefully be before this board in August, where we lay out the proposed timeline, the activities, and the deliverables for the next 24 months to make sure that we've garnered your alignment. And then depending on your appetite for that, we welcome the opportunity to do subsequent briefings every quarter.
Great. Well, thank you, Ms. Smith, and thank you for participating tonight with us. I'm very excited about this service and company, Ms. Smith, being able to tell our story and let our customers, our stakeholders, our residents, however you refer to it, who we are and the value that we add, I think is critically important. And that's kind of been a missing link so far. I mean, we as board members and our councils are out there talking about who we are and our story. But I think this now gives us an opportunity to kind of take that to the next level. So thank you. I did have some questions, and I had on to the general counsel. So I'm just going to go through some of those, if that's okay. So I just wanted to know, in terms of, there was some extra work, and when you look at the contract, it talks about extra work, but some of the extra work also correlates to or corresponds to the work that's within the scope contract as well. And so just interested in terms of the fees in the back, where it talks about primary staff and rates. And so are these the fees for extra work that are going to be charged throughout the duration of the contract?
Yeah, the scope of work with the list of fees for services that they're providing, and then hear me?
Yes.
Sorry. The extra work is intended to be anything above the scope of work that they have certain fees. Usually it's time and materials. I didn't negotiate the fee schedules, but there should be a separate fee schedule for the scope of work, and extra work is just usually a dollar amount for anything over and above the scope of work that's directed by the executive director.
All right, I just saw that extra work was defined as even project, say a project was within the scope. That is understanding that there's only so much work that's going to go into that project within the scope, and we're asking them to do more. That's extra work, and I was just wondering, are these fees tied to that? Like, what are the fees for that extra work, and what's the fees for the duration of the contract?
Yeah, I don't believe we're going to never plan to go outside of scope, so we don't anticipate any extra fees, but any fees that would be charged, we have a rate schedule here also included. They'd be consistent. We'll be managing the scope and the budget to make sure that we're at least consistent there. And it's confusing, maybe something we can.
So just want to make sure that they were tied.
Yeah.
And then also in paragraph 2.5, it should be practice that we identify a position instead of a person. So in this instance, it would be from executive officer or the CEO or her designee instead of the actual person within difference in terms of the contracts, but you could have contracts with people.
We can make that correction going forward.
And then there was within the exhibit A, or there's it's the
Scope of services.
scope of services, correct. So exhibit A, and on paragraph 6 or subsection 6, there name out A, B, and C, and then there's the work with staff to develop elements of performance metrics, but not limited to positive balance press to maintaining customer outputs at 5% or below. So is that part of matrix performance? Is that supposed to be subsection D?
Yeah, that does seem more appropriate to be D. It's because we don't have the metric developed. Maybe that's why it came out separately, or maybe that's a formatting error, but is clearly part of the performance metrics for us to determine customer opt-outs. That was one of the.
That's critically important to me, that maintain 5% or lower opt-out, and so your help is critically important to that end. Just and overall, a lot of the contracts that we've been seeing are longer than 1 year. I like 1 year just because it enables this board to address the issue in a year to see what the performance is and whether or not it's satisfactory to us. I know that we can always see that regardless, but every contract now has seemingly been longer than a year, and this one is actually 2 years. And so is this standard in the industry that we have a 2-year contract as opposed to 1 year?
I think, well, Brian, you chime in if you need to. I think typically contracts are a little bit longer than a year, just because that's a lot of work to come back each year and contracts. But we've talked actually a lot about this and ensuring that our termination rights are pretty strong in our contracts, so that if there's a reason why we want to get out, we really foresaw this work going for the next 2 years because of the time.
In terms of like our ability to out of the contract. I know it's odd saying that from the it's prudent to say that. Comfortable with provisions in here that allow.
Yeah, all the contracts that have come before you have termination for convenience clauses. So long as SDCP gives the consultant 7 days notice, it can terminate for any reason or no reason at all. I'm pretty insistent upon that as counsel that this be.
Lastly, in terms of work product of civilian, anything that they do, all of the branding and all that stuff is.
Yes, Section 5 has a pretty robust intellectual property clause, so anything generated for SDCP will be your intellectual property, other than, say, their know-how or internal processes, software, things like that. But anything, any marketing study, et cetera. That'll all be.
Any questions for staff or for Ms. Smith? Have any public comment on this item?
Do not.
All right, so I would entertain a motion if there are questions. All right, so we have a motion and a second by board member.
Board Member Montgomery, how do you vote?
Yes.
Board Member Baber, how do you vote?
Yes.
Vice Chair Padilla, how do you vote?
Yes.
Chair Mosca, how do you vote?
Yes.
Motion carries with all board members voting.
All right, let's move to item number 3, and that is the of Lean Energy U.S. contract.
Yeah, so
Our interim executive officer.
Excuse me if I may interrupt. Just a friendly reminder to speak into the mic as close as you can and as comfortable, just to ensure audio capability. Also, if you can unmute your mic using it, it might help with the audio, but just as an FYI. Thank you.
we're hearing a lot of concerns that the volume is dipping in and out for technology. Okay, this next item is approving an amendment to the Lean Energy US contract. So this, as you all are very familiar, this is primarily Sean Marshall has been our face for Lean Energy US, and it functions in many ways as just a staff extension for SDCP, helping us get off the ground and bringing extensive know-how plus just resources to bear. We have a contract with her that was approved back, I believe, in February, listed here, a limit of $75,000 through the rest of this year, so through December 31st of 2020. I'd like to amend that, not for time, but just for budget, to increase the not to exceed budget to $100,000. The purpose of that really is to expand her scope, or the scope of Lean Energy US, and also allow her to bring on Ashton Saria as a subcontractor for her to provide additional resources to SDCP. That will also allow him to transition to being full-time for us, providing the support he's been providing plus more this year. So I will be very brief on it as a chair for your consideration.
Any questions?
No, I'll move the item, Mr. Chair.
All right, do we have a second? Vice Chair Padilla.
Do not.
Can't
Vice
hear.
Chair, Board Member Montgomery, how do you vote?
Yes.
Board Member Baber, how do you vote?
Yes.
Vice Chair Padilla, how do you vote?
Yes.
Chair Mosca, how do you vote?
Yes.
Motion carries with all board members voting yes.
Now we move to item number 4, which is approval of public records request policy. So one of those policies we are checking off the box.
Lost in my packet. This is yours.
Yeah.
I will hand this over to our general counsel.
Thank you. I have before you a public records request policy for San Diego Community Power. It's pretty standard run-of-the-mill policy that you've probably seen in your home jurisdictions. It essentially governs how staff should handle PRA requests internally. Here is the statute and case law in this area. So you'll see that it goes through what someone should do with the request, the timelines for processing it, to do with oral requests, how to clarify what the requester is looking for, and then the types of records that may be exempt from disclosure. So again, very standard PRA policy. You know, in the last several years of my career, I've seen a large uptick in PRAs. So it's helpful, I think, to have these kind of policies in place. One, to ensure that staff is processing them in accordance with law, but two, to ensure fair and open access by the public to these records, and so that they are disclosed accordingly. If you have any questions, I'm glad to answer.
Questions for our general counsel? A comment on this?
We do not.
Entertain a motion at this time? Motion on the table. Second by Vice Chair Padilla.
Montgomery, how do you vote?
Yes.
Board Member Baber, how do you vote?
Yes.
Vice Chair Padilla, how do you vote?
Yes.
Chair Mosca, how do you vote?
Yes.
Motion carries with all board members voting yes.
Let's move to item number 5, discuss and consider potential actions relating to the City of San Diego's franchise fee agreement negotiations. And I think Chair Eddie Price of our Community Advisory Committee and Matthew is with us.
Yes, so I'll briefly introduce them. The Community Advisory Committee met last Friday and recommend that the board provide input to the City of San Diego regarding their franchise fee. Also, the second action they recommended was to consider SDCP. There are 2 recommendations here from the committee to the board. Staff took the liberty of reviewing their recommendations and writing them up here in the staff report. Depending on how the board votes tonight on this action, we'll turn these bullet points into a letter that we send to the City of San Diego for comment from SDCP. What we did here was take some of the Community Advisory Committee's bullet points of their letter and listed them here for you, and not all of them, but most of them. And then we also added an additional few that staff thought were relevant. Again, I won't read this to you, but several bullet points around just compliance with the CCA Code of Conduct, asking for a rooftop solar code of conduct, at an annual performance audit to ensure that whatever franchise agreements the city ends up with and whatever operators they choose, that they regularly to ensure compliance with the agreements. We added some items here about data access. We hear a lot about experience this of data is power and is knowledge, and better access and improved access to data, both about customer data, but also about distributed grid data, and would be very beneficial to the CCA, and about the City of San Diego being a large component of the CCA would be interested in seeking that data. These are around executing an MOU between the city operator they select and SDCP to create a CCA operational best practices, developing a working relationship that's documented of how we share things, how we communicate, those types of ideas, and then also ensuring whatever utility operator the city selects provides all the programs to all the customers equally, whether they're a bundled customer or a CCA customer. So those are the series of recommendations we offer to you as a letter to the City of San Diego. The second recommendation that is here is to join the Coalition for Better Franchise Agreements staff. While we appreciate that recommendation, we're actually going to recommend against it. Joining a coalition takes time and effort to engage and make sure that the coalition is all in agreement on letters and positions and things, and just limited capacity there, and don't feel that that's necessary for us at this moment in light of the other activities that we need to do. So with that, I'll leave that for you all. Answer a question. And we also have the chair of the Community Advisory Committee, Eddie Price, is on the line. I don't know, Eddie, if you want to introduce quickly this item, and then Matt is going to present some of the information shared to the Community Advisory Committee. I've asked them both, and I think Sebastian has too, to be brief. Long day already. Mr. Price?
Greetings, and I don't know if you can hear me. I'm kind of uncomfortable with this technology. I haven't heard anything anybody has said, basically. So I'll just let it rest with what the interim director has mentioned and pass it off to Matthew. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Vasilevsky, if you are available.
Yes, can folks hear me? Yeah, happy to present. I know I had a little slide deck. I'm not sure if that's going to get posted up.
It's available.
Thank you. Wonderful. So I'll do this really quickly because you're all fairly familiar with the issue. These franchise agreements are a huge deal. And for San Diego Community Power, it's the other side of the coin. So, the Community Advisory Committee, which I am on, Matthew Vasilakis, decided that it would be important for us to have a discussion about these and to bring forward recommendations for the board to consider in, shaping the conversation on these. So, next slide, please. So, basically, what are the franchise agreements? They are very important contracts that allow the utility access to the public right-of-way for a fee paid for by ratepayers to put up their infrastructure, gas lines, power lines, wires and poles to deliver the electricity, which this board will be signing off and procuring on. Next slide. They are important because not only are they multi-billion-dollar agreements for the city of San Diego, they also dictate our local energy system, their use, design, and their costs. Next slide. So obviously, we have had concerns as a community advisory committee about our current utility. We have the highest rates in California. We've seen an extreme amount of hostility with regards to our clean energy goals and programs. There's a clear lack of cooperation, very limited accountability, and a poor track record that we really need to recognize and understand. Next slide. So, this impact is SDCP. This was brought up because these agreements will influence the relationship that SDCP has with the utility that is managing the billing, distribution, and transmission side of our energy. Next slide. Impacts include, obviously, energy rates. That's a reflection of everyone, regardless of what side of the coin it's coming from. Customer service, day-to-day operations, local and clean energy development. It's a huge issue. And helping meet our community goals, our climate action plan goals, our clean energy goals, our equity goals, the local economic development goals. All of these things have impacts on SDCP, and these agreements are a part of that. Next slide. So what can SDCP do? Well, we're asking the board to support a better deal that fosters partnership, that mandates cooperation, that ensures accountability, and that meets our community goals. So what we're asking for specifically is for the board to write up and send a letter to the city of San Diego outlining its priorities that they believe are important and most pertinent for SDCP to the city, again, just to share the concerns and to really get through to the city, why they need to secure specific provisions that'll make our launch even more successful than it will be. So thank you.
Thank you, Matthew, and thank you, Mr. Price. Thank you for serving on our Community Advisory Committee. We truly appreciate everything that you guys are doing and the connection that you're to the community. So thank you for serving, and thank you for this presentation today. Questions on this item for staff or for Matthew or for Eddie? Have any public comment? Is Mark able to?
Like to, but it looks like it's not working.
Our first comment is from Joyce Lane. Dear board members, San Diego 350 is very concerned to learn that SDCP is already having to battle with SDG&E to secure our clean energy future. We understand that SDG&E sent a letter to the CPUC requesting a delay in its customer information system due to difficulties in implementing CPUC policy. This is unacceptable for a multi-billion-dollar corporation. SDG&E can afford to hire the right people to figure it out and get the job done without delay. This is risking SDCP's finances and launch. Also, the recent PCIA exit fee increase that SDG&E proposed, while not directly impacting SDCP, is evidence of what you can expect from SDG&E. These profit-centered actions are adversarial and make it apparent that they are ready and willing to undermine the desires of our community. We urge the board to be vigilant in addressing what SDG&E is doing to SDCP. Clean energy advocates in the community have the board's back to ensure SDCP is a success. Thank you. Our next comment is from Tyson Siegel. Chair Mosca and SDCP Board, my name is Tyson Siegel, and I am the Energy Analyst for the Protect Our Communities Foundation. Thank you for considering a position on the City of San Diego's franchise agreements, gas and electric. The franchise agreement will be expiring after 50 years, making this a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. This is the time for the City of San Diego to place conditions on the utility that serves the City of San Diego. The city has included an excellent recommendation to integrate the IOU CCA Code of Conduct into the franchise agreement. Thus, rather than simply trust the CPUs to enforce the Code of Conduct, the code can be enforced locally as well to protect SDCP. Protect Our Communities Foundation recommends that 1, the SDCP support the planned inclusion of the Code of Conduct in the franchise agreements, and 2, the SDCP request that the city also set an automatic penalty fee of $500,000 per violation. The last comment is from Julia Severson. Dear SDCP board members, it is critical that the City of San Diego franchise agreement set requirements for SDG&E or any franchisee to make its data available to the city and San Diego Community Power. The CCA must be able to access accurate data from the franchisee. Currently, the CCA struggles to obtain data from SDG&E. Additionally, during the city's ongoing process of drafting its new franchise agreement, SDG&E, the current franchisee, argued that the city's consultants inaccurately represented SDG&E's performance. Mostly this was blustered by SDG&E. However, any inaccuracies can easily be chalked up to SDG&E's failure to provide data transparency. We urge you to be hyper-vigilant regarding SDG&E's practices and act decisively to promote and ensure SDCP success. That concludes the public comments.
All right, any comments by the board? I think that the staff has done a good job in incorporating that we would want to put in a letter. Stick to what the interest of SDCP is. My understanding is that a franchise agreement has a whole lot of terms and issues that are broached in an agreement. I want to get involved in all of those items because they're not necessarily relevant to SDCP. And so I think that what has laid out is really within our lane and is of interest for us. So I would move support staff's recommendation to these items that are highlighted on page 2. Letter to support of the city's franchise, negotiating on those we're asking for.
I think it's the terms that they should seek. It's not necessarily a support or not support at this time. It's just what terms to be advocating for, and that's what these points.
All right, and so that we would like to advocate for the inclusion of these terms highlighted on page 2 into the new franchise agreement in the City of San Diego. So that will be a motion. Do we have a second on that? Seconded by Vice Chair Padilla.
Board Member Montgomery, how do you vote? Yes. Board Member Baber, how do you vote?
Yes.
Vice Chair Padilla, how do you vote?
Yes.
Chair Mosca, how do you vote?
Yes.
Motion carries with all board members voting yes.
Let's move to item number 6, approval of the advisory committee's standard operating procedures.
Yeah, I'll kick this off and give Sebastian briefly to. We saw this last time. This was the committee being a new committee, getting their feet underneath them and figuring out what is within their purview and rules of the game for represent SDCP. That's really what this document outlines. Sebastian has summarized here what's in this standard operating procedures document and what has changed from last time. Happy to take any.
Thank you very much, Cody. Board of Directors, just very quickly, the Community Advisory Committee has been very active and very engaging since the very beginning, and part of that process has been adding a little bit more structure, and this is those pieces. As Cody alluded to, the staff report tells you what's new and what's been updated. One thing that we thought should be put out in detail a little bit more is communications external agencies. And as our JPA agreement states, the Community Advisory Committee is an agency that advises you all, and that is their primary purpose. And we felt like putting that in paper a little bit better for you. So that's a new component. The ones that are updated, it's very minor. One of our party members, Gary Johns from Encinitas, he submitted comments. He was very active. And he suggested a few tweaks to two of the updated items, the requesting information to support CAC work and updating the work plan. The one that I do want to mention is the second to last bullet point, conducting outreach. He suggested the creation of a community member communications guide. And we thought that was a good idea because we want to, and this is in discussion with Cody, engage civilian to have them go out to the community advisory committee, hear them out and hear what are the best practices, because don't know what the communications patterns in the Mesa are versus Chula Vista, or even within our individual members. So we really wanted to hone in on that, and so those are the changes you have here too.
Questions for Sebastian or Cody? And I do think that just kind of fixating on I like the fact that it would by this board, not because it's some power to approve this their work plan, but because it's a nice opportunity for us to check in with them in terms of what they're doing and what their agenda is for and I still, you know, I'll say it again. I think that to every year that we start off with strategic planning by this board, help us and inform us for the budget discussions. Once we put our plan into place, that we work with the CAC, we would say, okay, this is what we've planned. These are our goals for the year. Their work plan would basically complement what we're so I think that we had strategic planning, some sort of annual meeting with the advisory committee, and then that would all feed discussions.
Yes, absolutely. And it's funny you mention that because I believe at the last CAC meeting, we had that very same question where the committee was, again, they're very excited. Obviously, we've worked very hard for this, and they're asking, when can we meet, do strategic thinking? Funny you should mention that. So yeah, just wanted to.
All right, any public comment on item 6?
There's no public comment on item 6.
All right, so this is do we have to do approval of the community? So we have to approve this. Mm-hmm. So do we have a motion? We have a motion by Board Member Baber and a second by Board Member Montgomery.
Board Member Montgomery, how do you vote?
Yes.
Board Member Baber, how do you vote?
Yes.
Vice Chair Padilla, how do you vote?
Yes.
Chair Mosca, how do you vote?
Yes.
Motion carries with all board members voting yes.
All right, we're almost done with this long day. For some of you, you may not know that we've been meeting since almost noon, so we're almost done. Director comments. Anybody, any of my board member colleagues have anything to say? Reports by our interim executive officer.
None.
Report by our council.
Oh, thank you, Mr. Chair.
All right, any report by our board clerk?
I'd like to mention that I did finish the May minutes, so they will be on the next agenda. And I'm still working on the others, but I'm doing my best.
We appreciate anything you're getting done.
Bastion, do you have anything to report? All right, nobody has anything to report, so I will report that we are done. And our next meeting is August, what did it say here? Is the
It's on your screen.
August 27th. See you then. Have a good night.
Everyone.